The answer is, well, it depends. The most obvious answer is that different games have different development times. A short game could be done in less than a year, but a long game could take a few years. AAA games famously take ages to come out when it's not annual slop, taking 3 to 6 years to release. This is because trying to get 300 people working together to make a massive scale game is nothing short of insanity. However, that's AAA games. These are games that tend to be open world or have large maps, have a stupid amount of side systems that may or may not be relevant to the main game, have lengthy cinematic cutscenes, or simply have high fidelity photorealistic graphics. These games usually take 40 to 60 hours to complete, so it's no wonder it could take half a decade to finish them. Honestly, whether or not games should be this large is a different question in and of itself. But let's be real, AAA games are not the only games that have taken half a decade to develop. Stardew Valley took 5 years, with a solo dev spending an average of 10 hours a day every single day of the week. Animal Well took 7 years, but then you've got games like Undertale, which took about 3 years, and wait, Hollow Knight also took around 3 years? Okay, well, if you want to count the DLCs as part of development, then technically development on the game officially stopped in 2018 with the release of Godmaster, so the Hollow Knight you can play today is actually made over 4 years. Considering they're all free DLC and are already part of the game when you buy it, I'd say it's fair to say that. But as you can see, indie games also have a varied development time, because it also depends. If you're a solo dev, you have your work cut out for you, and a game that would have otherwise taken a fraction of the time ends up taking a few extra years. On the other hand, if you have a team of people, you can get stuff done faster. However, the more people you have, the harder it is to manage. The game design document, art bible, and whatever sorcery programmers use is going to be so much more important. You'd start needing to elect leads to keep each department organized. You need to hold more meetings to make sure everyone's on the same page, and communication goes down a telephone line. It's no surprise that a lot of game devs preferably want to avoid that nightmare and work on a smaller team. Okay, let me tell you something. This is cool and all, but this video is actually about Silksong. Shocker. With the advent of the Team Cherry interview being released, I thought I'd make this video to discuss some very interesting revelations. Silksong was originally revealed in February of 2019, but looking at the footage being shown in the reveal trailer, I cannot bring myself to believe that development on this didn't start immediately after the release of Godmaster in mid-2018, due to the sheer amount of areas, enemies, and art assets being presented. In 2022, Xbox said that it would definitely release within a year, and according to Team Cherry, even they thought it was true. So after about 4 years of development, the same time it would take for Hollow Knight and its DLCs to release, Team Cherry was considering releasing the game. But for some reason, it didn't end up going through. It would still take 2 to 3 extra years to release. The reason for this still remains unclear even after the interview article. It could be that they wanted to add more areas or to expand some systems and mechanics. Or maybe they thought it could use more polish. Well, from the article, we can tell that the post-production stage probably happened about 1 or 2 years ago. At that point, they had not been adding anything major anymore, and were focusing on polishing everything else. This puts the timeline to the majority of the delay. The delay took 2 to 3 years, but if Team Cherry said that the last 1 to 2 years were the polishing stage, then we can surmise that the biggest reason for the delay was that they needed to add finishing touches. I mean, I would expect them not to add anything major 4 years into production, but it's anyone's guess at that point. We're not even sure when pre-production began, but it had to have been in the works for a long time considering that Silksong was just meant to be a Hollow Knight DLC. On the same day the reveal trailer was released on February 14th, Ari and William posted a casual rundown video explaining some details about the game. In it, they mentioned that the biggest reason for the shift from DLC to full game was that it was more fun for them if Hornet were to explore a whole new kingdom. The other reason was that they didn't know how to make DLCs, which explains why Hollow Knight had content patches rather than full-on DLCs. Even back then, they mentioned that the game was huge. So what does all of this mean? The way I see it, they had essentially made Hollow Knight but with the DLCs in it before release, and then delayed it publicly one time to add a great deal of polish and finishing touches. Even still, Team Cherry already has big plans for Silksong DLCs. No, it's not that they wanted to make DLC, it's just that Silksong wasn't even supposed to be released yet. According to the article, they had stopped working on the game to prepare for release because they wanted the game to be out, even though they really could have just continued. So yes, the only reason Silksong is real right now is because it would be nice if the game was out already, people get to play it, and then they can go right back to working on it. At the end of the day, they would be doing the fans a disservice if they kept working on it for 10 years without contact. And therein lies the crux of the discussion: communication with the players. With indie games, developers tend to update the community through devlogs, blog posts, or small posts on social media. Team Cherry used to do this, but only went silent at the end of 2019 with their final blog post. They have made it clear that they do not want to make promises in case things slide, which tends to happen a lot in game development. However, that also meant that sharing anything about the game was a risk. They also wanted to avoid spoilers, and seen in their 2019 blog post, they barely revealed a few enemies. According to the article, Team Cherry said that continuously saying "we're working on it" was going to sour people's feelings about development, which I assume is due to lackluster details. On one hand, this is true. Fans get so hungry over wanting to know more, and I wouldn't be surprised, had they kept giving us proper blog posts every few months, there were going to be people unhappy that it's just another vague "it's still happening" post. However, it's not a stretch to say that Team Cherry definitely could have given us something vague but still informative. They said they didn't want to spoil much, but it's not that difficult to hide that kind of thing. Here, I can give you some examples. We've added 5 new enemies. We finished working on a new boss. We added more animations for the background. We made changes to Hornet's abilities. We created a new type of gadget for Hornet. We're starting to work on a new area. We've decided to scrap a couple of NPCs. We're working on more quests. We're fixing up issues that were caused by the latest build. These kinds of updates are super vague, but it still lets us know that things are happening and progress is being made. No spoilers, no nothing. Just, okay, they've been working on a boss. They've been working on an area. They're designing new things. This lets us know enough detail to be confident that the game is going smoothly, satiating our curiosity. Nowadays, fans have gotten so hungry for scraps of information that yes, in fact, a simple "we're still working on it" would be massive news. It's time to accept that, yes, it's great that they were always working on the game, but the lack of even an official annual update is negligence. And look, I'm not upset that there were no updates or whatever crumbs we did get from Leth, the marketing manager. I discovered Hollow Knight during COVID, and I don't obsess over Silksong news. I show up at every Nintendo Direct, Summer Games Fest, Gamescom, the Game Awards, all of this, sure. I also pray and cope that there would be Silksong, but once that's done, I browse r/Silksong for a bit and then move on. I have a life. I'm busy with other games, my education, my own projects. Once in a while, I check in. For me, I'm not as affected as some others when it comes to the lack of updates. I'm glad Team Cherry had no major snags and everything was hunky-dory, but I still do wish they did a little bit more for the community. There are plenty of people who are bigger fans than me, who anticipate Silksong more than I do, who make content for Hollow Knight, who actively engaged in the community to Silk post because really, Silksong is more than just a game at this point. It's a culture. I'm not making a joke. The culture of waiting for Silksong has fostered such a dedicated and active community, and Team Cherry are right. Releasing the game kind of ruins that fun. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all just fun in games. Players went insane trying to scrape for news, and Team Cherry mistakenly thought that lackluster news was no news at all. This is a lesson they should learn, in my opinion. From the looks of it, Team Cherry aren't concerned with the players. Now, I'm not saying they don't care about us, but what I am saying is that they are primarily in their own world. They live and breathe Silksong. They wake up every day to Silksong. They're always thinking about Silksong, and they've adopted an approach where they took their time to ensure everything was perfectly how they envisioned it, down to the last minute detail. It's a passion project, purely, wholly, and nothing more. They're not gonna add a popular mechanic because it'll sell well. They're not gonna add a boss that'll appeal to certain audiences. They're not gonna do a lot of marketing work or set up pre-order bonuses or give early copies to critics for reviews because they think it's unfair. It's a passion project, one that could only exist because of their privilege, yeah. They have money, they have time, they weren't affected by COVID. They took advantage of their privilege to create their dream game. My expectations for the game, I don't think it's going to be worth 7 years. I think it's going to be better than Hollow Knight. I think I'm going to have a blast, and it might get into my top 10 games of all time. But 7 years is a lot. It's life-changing. Spending 2020 to 2025 with no proper updates kind of changes our expectations for a game. What kind of experience will this give me? Would I be satisfied with a good experience, or are my standards now raised? Will it be disappointing even if it's a great game, purely because there's nothing that could be worth the wait? I'm sure many of you are thinking about this, and I am too. From one creative to another, I recognize Team Cherry's efforts and love for this game, but I will criticize their decisions to leave fans in the dark for too long. I know the article mentioned that they had originally intended to go silent for only maybe 1 or 2 years, but what happened after that? After a couple of years, did the thought cross their mind? After the Xbox delay, did it not occur to them to take 30 minutes out of their day to explain what's been done? Why is it delayed, even in the vaguest of terms? I think the relationship between developer and player comes into the spotlight here. What even is the relationship between these two parties? Are we owed something by them? Or should the developers be allowed to bury their heads in work and never worry about assuring players? Is the marketing manager responsible for that instead? Are the devs and marketing managers supposed to communicate this kind of thing? Well, my aim isn't to answer those questions. The answers are complicated, and I think it would be good to have nuanced discussions about this within the community. At the end of the day, I'm massively hyped for Silksong and couldn't care less that Team Cherry hadn't said a word for the past few years. However, it's also important to listen to the voices within the community and talk about it. Should games take 7 years to release? Well, I'd say that if the game needs 7 years, then by all means go ahead. However, the longer it takes, the more I personally think that players must be informed at reasonable intervals. Some fans turn around from the game due to being soured by the lack of communication. Some fans question whether the quality of the game is even up to snuff. Everyone has different reactions, and all of them are equally valid. Everyone has different ideas about what developers should be doing and what players should be doing. Some devs think of the community one way, and some think another. Oh, all developers, or not all developers, all players, some players, not all players. It's complicated. However, it's a professional game developer's job to manage the expectations of the player. There are some things you cannot control and some expectations that are completely unrealistic, but it's still your job to deal with it because they are the customers you're selling your product to, and you need them to buy your game. Announcing your game isn't in a vacuum, that in itself is a promise. You can't listen to every voice in the community, but you must also acknowledge the community. Games that go into development hell are usually plagued with internal conflicts, lack of planning, lack of leadership, lack of funding, lack of hands, but it really is a miracle that Team Cherry were able to make smooth, consistent progress with so little people, and their dedication is tough to match in the entire games industry. A true development heaven where the biggest controversy wasn't that it was awful or that the game was taking too long, but rather primarily the lack of updates. The game itself is untouched, leaving most of us simultaneously excited and worried about whether or not the game would be fun at all. But Team Cherry wouldn't make a game that wasn't fun, and they've obsessed over every little thing about the game too much for it to be incomplete. However you may feel about the developers, I implore you to trust the process and your minds will be blown. In a good way. Not in the shooting yourself way, that's bad way. Yeah.